In our combined cohort in the target population where we've got 72 patients, we're seeing a progression-free survival of 69% at 22 months. And if you can compare that to the historic standard of care, it's 11 and a half months, a median 11 and a half months. So that's 50% in 11 and a half months. It's a whopping difference.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Scancell CEO Phillip L'Huillier. Phil, very good to speak with you again. You're out with your annual results and a business update this morning. Can you summarize the year and where you are?
Yes, good morning, Stephen. Thank you for talking to me today, and it's great to see you again. Scancell has had a great year. We've made good progress with our pipeline. We've made good progress with building out the organization for further development. And I think it's fair to say we've raised our profile. First and foremost to talk about is our lead program. That's the SCOPE study in melanoma, and we've made amazing progress there. We read out some data recently. It's a translational study asking four key questions, really. One is, which is the product we want to take forward for further development? What's the patient population that it works in and that we should use in a future study to work on? How do we administer this drug? And what's the dosing schedule? We said we were going to answer those questions in this translational study, and we've done that. We've selected iSCIP1+, it's called, to move forward in further development. And it's amazing seeing meaningful clinical benefit come from administering our drug on top of standard of care, the checkpoint therapies. There's two additional points that have come out of this, the analysis of the early data. One is the drug was designed in the laboratory to work in patients with a certain profile, HLA haplotypes, it's called. And pleasingly, we're seeing it's doing in the clinic what was written on the tin. And that gives us real confidence about moving forward. And then secondly, I just wanted to say that as we've now been able to identify that responder population, we have a selection tool, a tool we can use to screen patients that will respond and use that screening tool to select the responder population in the next phase of development. And that's most likely going to enhance success.
What about other assets in your pipeline, Phil?
The other assets in the pipeline, there's a second clinical program. It's called MODI1 from the MODITOPE platform, a very unique mechanism of action, currently in phase 2 in 2 cohorts, head and neck cancer and renal cell carcinoma. We've shared some data on head and neck where we're seeing clinical benefit. We're recruiting well in the renal cohort, and we anticipate sharing more data later in the year from that cohort. And then we also have, Stephen, an early pipeline, a preclinical pipeline of antibodies, anti-glycan antibodies, antibodies that hit the sugars on tumor cells. This pipeline, we're now in the process of putting it into a wholly owned subsidiary company that's designed to bring better focus to the development, focus resource into that new co within Scancell, but also focus management to move that portfolio forward. And we're making good progress on doing that. I should share with you just one of the results from our SCOPE study. We're now focused on PFS, progression-free survival. That's what's important in the next stage of development. And that's what's important for the regulators like the FDA and others to get approval of a drug. In our combined cohort in the target population where we've got 72 patients, we're seeing a progression-free survival of 69% at 22 months. And if you can compare that to the historic standard of care, it's 11 and a half months, a median 11 and a half months. So that's 50% in 11 and a half months. It's a whopping difference.
Phil, what's next for Scancell?
Wow, we have progressed very efficiently documentation for regulatory conversations, and we have regulatory conversations now scheduled for the next phase of development. The team has done a Herculean effort to get all the documentation ready and submitted. And so there's that piece now, regulatory conversations with the FDA, and also hopefully EMA and MHRA about our study plans and our data that's coming out of our studies. Those conversations will happen over the next quarter. And we're also knocking on as many doors as we can, talking to potential partners and potential investors, joining us, coming on board with us to move forward together for further development. And we will continue to execute the plans for further development, be it in partnership or going alone. So a lot going on and a lot for us to do and a really, really successful year.
Well, Phil, I hope you'll continue to keep us posted on your progress. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Stephen.
Phillip L'Huillier, the CEO of Scancell.